A special shout out to Squarespace for sponsoring this episode.
We demolished the back and tried to bring, I guess, a sense of anticipation that there's something more by effectively When I first came to visit the house, I could tell it had great proportions, but like so many of these houses, it had developed over time. So historically, people would have used the house in a very different way. And by the time I came here, it had a kind of 1970s addition that felt substantially worse than the front of the house. You came into this dark wooden back section with small kitchen, a small living area. The house was very claustrophobic. It was dark. The garden was a complete mess. The living space was too small and the grace of the front of the house was not there. They came to me really driven by a desire to have that kind of living area, the dining area, the kitchen area, as a space that they could gather round. When they were talking about that, I was suggesting that we have a second story, that we break it open so that we get a greater sense of space. It's really a kind of central core of the building. It's a very social area. I was lucky enough to work with Rodney Cox from Into Projects, who was the builder and the client. What he brought to the project was a meticulous attention to detail, which worked very well. We collaborated very closely, and his wife was fascinated by modern architecture and knew a lot about modern architecture and always brought wonderful ideas to the process. We demolished the back and tried to bring, I guess, a sense of anticipation that there's something more by effectively putting a second story but treating it as a kind of black timber box that we broke to try and bring in light into the space. There's a rhythm of steel structure. It's kind of like a beat in music. Once you have that beat, whatever you do around it becomes a melody, if you like. The way that this house is organised was really driven by the fact that there was an existing house at the front and we were keeping that house, and so already we've got a front door, we've got a front hall, we've got a hall running down the side of the building, and there's rooms that we maintained at the front of the house. So at the front we had a second living area. Moving beyond that room there was another existing room put as the principal bedroom. That was there, and there was another room beyond it through another door, which was another bedroom. We closed that off and used that other bedroom as a walk-in robe and bathrooms. Beyond that, that's where we started to demolish. Rhythm down the house starts with existing rooms that are altered, and then new work starting with a kind of service area, so laundry, staircase, powder room, nestled in the center of the building, clearing the way for a living area that's more spacious. In the core of the building there's a staircase, and that brings you up to a kind of gangway that sits above the corridor. And upstairs it's another situation where you get a rhythm of rooms. So we have a bedroom, a bathroom, another room that leads onto a bedroom which is in an attic. There's a void above me, so as we come back down along that spine, we're looking over the main living area, and this really is to create a very good sense of space. And then beyond here there's a study. I've done a few buildings now which are black, and it's not because I push for that. I like it, but these kind of decisions are difficult to make. In this situation, we did some 3D models, and we looked at an all-white version of this, we looked at a timber version of this, we looked at a version with colors, and we looked at this version as black. So it really comes down to what the client feels happy with. Some people might be interested in romantic comedies, some people might be interested in Nordic noir, and that's a kind of projection of the client more so than a projection of myself. It's so important to make it right for the client. So it's ended up being a dark building, and we're able to do that because we've been able to bring in so much light into the building. We were very keen on kind of making the building feel lighter, so that gangway runs across there, it's perforated, and above that there's a skylight running the full length of the building. So light pours in, goes through the gangway, goes around the side of it, and there's a real sense of lightness in that area. And in fact, because of the perforation, you get this kind of wash of light on the walls. We're looking at this project very much from the inside, but what we end up with is an elevation at the back that is quite visible. Bearing in mind that the back faces west, so what we wanted to do is push out the study, cantilever it over the base of the building, and that's to do with this sense that the upper story is an element, and if you can extrude it out beyond what's happening below, then it makes that clear. And then it was, how do you treat that rear facade? Because of the sun, and also because of, I guess, an artistic ambition, I chose to kind of break up that upper facade into a kind of Mondrian-esque composition. Now on the lower floor, what we've got is a kind of blade, and then on one side we've got a bifold window. On the other side there's a daybed, and the daybed we've lifted above a pool, and we've actually slid the pool underneath the daybed. So again, that's a case of slipping geometries, if you like, so that someone can sit on the daybed and feel that they're floating, and equally someone can be in the pool and there's this kind of little hidden area underneath the daybed. And that looks right down the corridor. So again, when you come into the house and you look down the corridor, at the end of the corridor there's something. I used to work with a couple of companies that I found were very influential in the way that this came about. One was a company in Singapore called Chiverton Architects, which do a very kind of calm resort style of architecture. There is that sense of calmness to this building. There's another person that I work with, Paul Rudolph. His house had that kind of obvious structure, elements working over and around structure to create sculptural form. So both of those architects really influenced me on the project. And coming back here, I look at it and there's a kind of, well, semi-nostalgia, if you like, about that kind of work.
A special shout out to Squarespace for sponsoring this episode of the Design Emotive. Squarespace made sense when I built the Design Emotive's website years ago, and it makes even more sense to build your website with them today. Get started with templates made by world-class designers and build pages using sections quickly and beautifully, and then customize to your heart's content with fonts, color palettes, and more. Squarespace keeps things simple to make it easier for you to bring your ideas to life, and that's why I love using Squarespace. Then of course there are other features, such as members-only content areas, the ability to build a mailing list and send out newsletters, you can build an e-commerce store, scheduling tools, and powerful analytics are available so you can track visitors, page views, traffic sources, sales, form conversions, and more. So go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch your own website, go to squarespace.com/thedesignimotive to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.